Hello everyone, hope you're doing well. I thought today we would talk about the Europe Consumer Protection Cooperation, or Europe CPC as it's known. This is kind of a weird thing to bring up, but Chicken Row actually sent me some stuff about it, gave it a read, and I thought it would be interesting in terms of War Thunder and also other free-to-play games. As you know, when it comes to legislation or when it comes to governments, usually they're pretty slow in terms of trying to catch up with all of the different kind of mechanics and things that companies come up with in terms of monetization. You know, we still haven't really had any legislation when it comes to any of the crypto stuff, which has been kind of harrowing people for a long time. And also, they've started eventually getting into the loot box stuff over the last 5 to 10 years, even though it's been around for 20 or 30. And now they are starting to realize that in-game currencies can be quite predatory. So, the Europe Consumer Protection Cooperation has come up with a set of guidelines for companies to follow, which should kind of at least put pressure on companies to be a little bit more truthful in terms of their products. And I thought we would go through them in this video because, of course, this pertains to War Thunder. War Thunder is a free-to-play game. It has in-game currencies, which are not just, currencies based off of, dollar amounts or standard currency amounts. They are designed in a way so you buy Golden Eagles or you buy SL to be able to go forward in the game. So the guidelines themselves will definitely affect how Gaijin do stuff, just like how in the past there have been certain pieces of legislation or guidelines which have also come in that have done that too. Whether it's with the item shop, which nowadays, if you actually have a look at it, it does tell you the percentage chance of getting the vehicle in each individual box, and the percentage chance is obviously very low, but before it didn't show you that. There's also been other things that they've added in which have basically given people a bit more notice on how much stuff is. So let's go through the story of what's going on with this. First of all, there was a complaint, which is usually how this stuff goes. The Swedish Consumers Association sent a complaint to the EU Consumer Protection Cooperation. The Swedish Consumers Association sent this complaint because of a company that is registered in Sweden. This company runs Star Stable Online. Star Stable Online is your very typical mobile game. You basically buy horses, you travel around the world, you do competitions. It is very much designed around children, and it is very much designed around getting them to pay for cosmetics and then also kind of pay for different stuff. This game has been around, by the way, since 2012, so this is a 13-year-old game, and it's been operating not just on mobile, so Android and iOS, also on Windows and Mac. So this is all around the place. So it's taken them 13 years to realize that there is a problem with this game. So basically, this game does all the predatory practices that we've talked about before, and the European Consumer Protection Cooperation is using this, or the European Commission is using this to basically create a set of guidelines around what should be done and what shouldn't be done, and then also using it as an example to basically change existing rules in the European Union in their new Digital Fairness Act, which isn't in play yet, but should be coming out in mid-2026. So in a year from now, there will actually be proper laws on what you can and can't do, but right now it's just a set of guidelines for companies to follow on what's going on. So none of this is technically going to land people in heavy water, at least yet, but the idea is in the future, in another year's time, maybe something will happen, which is unfortunately a very, very standard story when it comes to governments. So the simple fact is, the whole point of their thrust here is to try and save the children, which I understand is one of those things which is annoying, especially if you're an adult, because sometimes, a lot of the time this type of language is used to try and invoke emotion and also to make it so it's fair. For pretty much like children. But at the end of the day, this will apply to everybody, and everybody will benefit from these things if they eventually go into law. So what we're going to do is we're going to go over the principles that they've kind of laid out and what they actually mean, because I'll leave the links in the description to all of these things, by the way, and we'll also talk about it, how it pertains to War Thunder or how it pertains to other games when they kind of set stuff up. So basically, this is a set of principles that companies should follow if they want to sell their products in Europe. That's the idea, and if they don't follow them, they're only technically guidelines right now, but the idea is next year there might be a possibility that they will get kind of enshrined into law. Therefore, companies can get gone after for this. Another part which is interesting, though, is the European Commission did send a letter to the guys who run Star Stable online and asked them for information about how their game works and how everything kind of runs in it. So therefore, they can also see what's going on from the internals and use that in order to build their case when it comes to the Digital Fairness Act. Whether they do that or not, they technically have a month to comply to this, but of course, as a Swedish company, who knows what's going to happen. So let's go through the principles and let's talk about how this will affect kind of online games. So principle 1 is price indication should be clear and transparent. This one is pretty simple. The whole issue with in-game currencies is their whole idea is to obfuscate their actual real-world price. So what the Commission basically wants people to do, or companies to do, is to put the dollar value of things next to the in-game currency value. And this is so whenever you purchase something, you know what the real world cost is. And if you have a look at certain areas of War Thunder, for example, if you click on the Golden Eagles in the hangar, you will find that that is already the case with War Thunder itself. But what they want to do, if you read kind of the fine print through it, is to put that next to every action that exists. So whenever you spend GE, it tells you how much GE in real world money you are actually using. And this is just so people get an idea of how much they're spending, because one of the key mechanics of creating a alternate currency is to obfuscate how much it is actually affecting your bank account. The other reason as well is something they also cover as well. So principle 2 is kind of an addition to principle 1. It's practices obscuring the cost of in-game digital content and services should be avoided. So basically the opposite side as well. So they should put forward the real world kind of costs of these things, and then also they shouldn't hide the real cost of these things. They talk about the practices to avoid: offering for purchase and mixing different in-game virtual currencies in one video game for purchasing in-game digital content or services, and that one is a bit of a problem. And then also requiring several exchanges of in-game virtual currencies before making any in-game purchase. And also they say when providing several different types of in-game virtual currencies within the same video game, or when a purchase of in-game items requires several exchanges of in-game virtual currencies before making the intended transaction, understanding its price becomes particularly difficult. So this would be the whole SL and GE thing, where you have multiple currencies. You technically have Gaijin Coin, you technically have Golden Eagles, and you technically have Silver Lions. These are all different systems, but in a way they can integrate together depending on how you see it. So for example, you could buy a premium vehicle for GE and then you could use SL to be able to get it into a lineup, or you could sell it or buy it for Gaijin Coin as a tertiary thing, which is, on the other side of it. So this is what they're kind of talking about to try and make it so you don't keep adding layers to these things. Therefore, you obfuscate once again the actual cost of a product, because the more layers you put on something, you can make those layers smaller. Therefore, it makes the cost seem smaller to the individual. It's kind of the whole point of like financing, for example, which, if you want to hear another hilarious economic story, the DoorDash is going to offer financing for deliveries, which just seems ridiculous. I can't believe there's going to be people who are going to go bankrupt because of burritos. But that's another story for another time. Principle 3 is the practices that force consumers to purchase unwanted in-game virtual currencies should be avoided. Now, this is a problem that Gaijin is going to have, because the whole point of Principle 3 is, so you know how in games where it'll be like, hey, so if you want to buy this battle pass, it's X amount of gold. But the problem is you can only buy X plus 50 gold. So therefore, whenever you buy the gold, you're actually buying higher than the amount you need for the battle pass itself. And then you have some extra stuff which is sat there. This is a standard technique that pretty much every company uses. And the reason for this is simple. If you have some extra, first of all, it can pay more, but also if you have a little bit in your account on top of what you already had, that means you may want to put it towards something else, and then it becomes a rolling ball. Maybe if you have a little bit in your account and you see something else that you like, but it's a little bit too much compared to what you have, then it's technically cheaper to buy it than it would be before for you. So therefore you put the money in, but then you have a bit more on your account after that purchase, and now you want to do it again. So it creates a snowball effect of paying for in-game items, and that's why companies do it. That's why you can't just flat out pay for specific things in the game. You pay for a currency to then buy that thing, so therefore they can manipulate the amount you get out of that currency while going forward. Gaijin does this with G, right? It's pretty much as simple as that. If you have a look at most of the in-game purchases for things, so let's say like a premium, right? So, for example, if you have a look at the T80UD, the T80UD is 9,270 golden eagles. The closest thing that you can buy, which is that, is 10,000 GE, right? So that means if you get that and then purchase the T80UD, you have around about 700 GE left that you can use on something. A premium account, if you have a look at it for a year, is 4,900 GE. If you actually want to buy that, you can't. The only way you can is if you buy 10,000 and then 5,000 G, which would give you too much, or 25,000, which would give you way too much. And this is how they do it. This is how it all goes. And that's, you know, that's how every company does it. So this principle is fantastic to see that they are implementing, because it's something that every single one of these games do, and it's to hook you into continuously paying for this stuff. So that is a good principle to see. Also, there are some pre-contractual information and contract terms. This is more about TOS and the ULA stuff, but Gaijin already follows all that. Principle 4 is consumers should be provided with clear and comprehensible pre-contractual information. So this is basically just talking about the general reason why the in-game digital currency is there, and also the real-world monetary value of everything in the contracts itself. So nothing too crazy. Pretty much every company, I'm pretty sure, does this anyway, unless they're incredibly shady, which isn't too surprising, since this can be a space which is filled with bad actors, which is why laws or why rules or why even principles and guidelines right now need to be stated. Principle 5 is consumer rights of withdrawal. This should be expected. So this one is specifically for the European consumer protection legislation. So this is in Europe itself. Technically, in Europe, if you buy a digital product, you have 14 days after the purchase to be able to refund that product and get it back. Unfortunately, there is an exemption to this, which everybody forgets about, which is really annoying. And it's the one if you have actually used this product, therefore the right to withdrawal is lost. Basically, it says for digital content to be exempted from the right of withdrawal, the consumer must give their express consent to begin using the content or service immediately and acknowledge that their right of withdrawal will be lost. And guess what? A lot of general contracts and a lot of general setups actually say that that's what you are doing when you are purchasing the item. So there is a get out of jail free card for this one, but also once again, there is a law in place already for the refund setup. Contractual terms should be fair and written in plain and clear language. This is in Principle 6, and I do find it funny that that basically if you read through this, to be honest, like this set of legal document isn't as bad as many others that I've read when it comes to the clear and plain language. It's just funny coming from like a mega entity, the idea that everything should be written in clear and plain language when obviously a lot of their stuff isn't. But once again, this is the way to kind of make it so people understand what they're buying, and I'm completely on board with that. There are many free-to-play games that are insanely predatory when it comes to all of this stuff, and I'm kind of sick of it. It's getting worse as well as time goes on, because you even have games nowadays where the in-game currency is a cryptocurrency that is run by the company as well. And obviously that can be 100% manipulated when it comes to what goes on. Technically with War Thunder and Gaijin, they could do that too with the Gaijin coin, but at least so far they haven't. So it's more of a trust on trust thing, which can be a bit confusing. Then you have the vulnerable consumers. This is kind of talking about what they always talk about. So this is the Think of the Children arc, which is completely fine. Generally, they do this just to kind of push forward why these things have to happen. So they talk about different groups that are vulnerable to these things. So, for example, either children or people have physical infirmities and credulity, or have mental infirmities. And the general idea is you shouldn't target these people with these specific adverts or with these specific practices. Whether you can actually control that or not is obviously very up to who is deciding what is being forced at. When it comes to War Thunder, so War Thunder technically, by the definition of the EU, does cater to children, since it's a 13+ game, so it's not an 18+ game, and this means that all of this stuff should be kind of taken into account. And then Principle 7 is going to be the hardest one to actually kind of enforce. And also, I don't know how it kind of works for pre-existing products. So it says Principle 7, game design and gameplay should be respectful of different consumer vulnerabilities. And this one, as I said, I don't know how this works for a pre-existing product, but for a product that is being built, fair enough. But that is not kind of what we're talking about here. So action points to be taken is when designing a video game that includes in-game virtual currencies, consider the vulnerabilities of the players and ensure that the gameplay does not exploit these vulnerabilities or unfairly influence consumers' economic behavior. Then, when designing commercial practices that encourage the purchase and or use of in-game virtual currencies, including advertising and marketing techniques, consider the specific vulnerabilities of the player demographics and ensure that they do not exploit these vulnerabilities or unfairly influence the economic benefits of these consumers. And then when designing the gameplay, always ensure that the commercial elements of in-game advertisement related to the in-game virtual currencies, digital content, and services to be purchased with in-game virtual currencies are sufficiently clear and distinguishable from the gameplay. Do not use commercial practices that directly exhort children to buy in-game virtual currencies or digital content or services, or persuade adults to buy it for them on their behalf. Ensure that functional parental controls with age-appropriate default settings are provided, such as by default disabling the possibility of spending real-world money in the video game if the video game is not exclusively limited to an adult-only audience. Use the platform-level parental controls offered by the platform on which the video game is available, and also avoid basing the business model on practices exploiting vulnerable consumers willing to spend excessive amounts of real-world money in a video game. So basically, don't be assholes. But as we know, especially when it comes to business, that is not always the easiest thing. As I said, a lot of this is kind of tailored around children and what children do. But at the same time, this is just a way of getting it passed. This will apply to everybody. One of the only issues I have here is obviously it's the kind of government telling or kind of setting up ways of being able to tell children what to do instead of the parents doing it. But that has been a tale as old as time, basically going back even 200 years. And hopefully at some point parenting can come in to be able to deal with this stuff and realize that this is a big problem. But if this has to come in, obviously that isn't something that's happening. And yeah, I thought we would just kind of show you what this is about. And I think just going through it, you can obviously tell this is going to go forward and be part of stuff like War Thunder's story, and also stuff like Enlisted's and many other free-to-play games. War Thunder is nowhere near the worst when it comes to these types of practices, but they have been ramping up quite aggressively over the last few years. And hopefully, at some point, some kind of government authority can come in and do some stuff about it and make sure that people are protected and, at the same time, are able to enjoy stuff without the money impending thing over its head. As I said, though, the Digital Fairness Act is still not enforced because it doesn't exist yet. This will come in mid-2026, and these are just guidelines which are preemptively made to think about before that gets put in. So anything can change until then, and I'm sure will when it comes to the European Union. As always, I hope you have a wonderful day, and I'll see you next time. I'd just like to thank GMG Smiley, CD Beans, Chieftain Mike, EMN3 Galaxy, Tulio Pontecorvo, Brendan Quinn, Carrion Crow, Gus Irenicus, Pyman, Wartinder, Teddy, Daniel Stanton, Martinez, B. Young, Ozzy Panzer, Alan Hacker, Liam Shear, Opium Prime, Lafouche, Sem Aslan, Uncle Bean, and Derek R. for supporting the channel.